Well, one coach down, another perhaps to follow. UAB has done the inevitable, which you pretty much saw coming from the day that they hired Trent Dilfer. He is out in the middle of his third season with the Blazers. A complete disaster of a coaching tenure coming to an end. And the bigger question, because it involves a bigger school, a larger program, a larger fan base, is Auburn's Hugh Freeze going to be next? Another very angry crowd left Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday night after a gut punch against Georgia that came from a number of directions, not all of Auburn's making. But the fact remains, you are what your record says you are, and Auburn went from 3-0 to 3-3 in what seems like the blink of an eye. And really, no one should be surprised. We'll get into that more as we get into the show. Hope everyone's off to a great week. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. Welcome into the heart of college football season, and now it is firing season. It was Black Sunday in a lot of ways yesterday, with Oregon State's coach getting whacked, Trent Dilfer getting whacked, and the big one, James Franklin at Penn State. Wow. Penn State's self-image is really inflated if you're going to fire James Franklin after what he's done for that program. We're not really here to talk about that today, but I got to say, at some point, this insanity has to stop, doesn't it? And I don't mean just the firing of coaches for losing games, losing a few games in a row, 3 in Penn State's case, but the contracts that schools continue to give these coaches that include these astronomical buyouts. Penn State owes James Franklin $49 million, reportedly not to coach there anymore. At what point do the administrators, the ADs, the presidents, the boosters who sign off on these deals and reward coaches for failure by bestowing them with generational wealth? It is Exhibit A of the most financially irresponsible enterprise in the United States of America. If there's another one, let me know, because I'm not aware of it. College athletics takes the cake and wants to eat it too. And now they want to complain and beg for help, and they want to look to private equity or private capital for more funds. Maybe if you got your own houses in order, maybe if you didn't throw all this money at unproven coaches or even proven coaches, why would you reward them for failure with these buyouts? It happens again and again and again. Let me take a moment to pause here because my blood pressure is starting to rise, and say thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer on the Sidelines.live network. And thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services. They will calm the waters. They will bring your blood pressure down. They are Birmingham's financial services firm. They're a fee-only, which sets them apart, family-owned business that's been in business since 1992 here in the Birmingham area, but they can help you wherever you live. So reach out to them. Click the QR code on the screen. We'll hear more from the Rice family and Money Management Services later in the show. So we really appreciate them. Really appreciate you watching and listening. This program is really growing. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Give us a like. Doesn't cost you anything, but it does help us. So we appreciate all of you who have done that, and we encourage you, the rest of you, to join the family. All right. So let's get into it. Let's start with UAB. Let's look. The numbers, I don't know if there is a category for the worst coaching tenures in college football history. but Trent Dilfer would have to be on the list. You can't make up numbers this bad. You almost have to try to fail this spectacularly. In 2.5 years with the Blazers, Trent Dilfer was 9-21. He was 5-14 in the American Conference. 0-15 on the road. Not a single road win. And this is what really takes it off the chart. 18 of his 21 losses came by 10 or more points. And 12 of his 21 losses, more than half, came by 20 or more points. Again, you almost have to try to be that incompetent. And what makes it even worse is this was not an incompetent football program that he inherited. This was not a program wandering in the wilderness when he arrived on the scene with zero college coaching experience. We all know what UAB did under Bill Clark. First of all, giving the program hope in 2014. Then came the shutdown. Then came the return. Then came winning season after winning season after winning season, bowl game after bowl game after bowl game, conference championships. The program was so successful under Bill Clark that UAB was able to earn an invitation. It was then, of course, in Conference USA, and with several of its conference members, it was invited to join the American Athletic Conference. And that move happened primarily because of the incredible work done by Bill Clark and his staff and Bryant Vincent, his offensive coordinator, who, when Bill resigned, retired, stepped down because of back problems, which were real. Don't misunderstand. His back issues were real, but his real issue was much bigger and more concerning than his back. So Trent Dilfer inherited a program that even under Bryant Vincent in his 1 year as the interim coach, they went 7-6. They lost so many close games that year, but they also closed the year with a bowl win. After Bill Clark's last game the year before was a bowl win over number 13 BYU. So UAB had a new stadium, protective stadium, beautiful downtown Birmingham. They had a new indoor facility. They had a new football facility, I should say. And they had the covered pavilion, which was a brilliant idea. They couldn't afford a complete indoor facility. So they built a pavilion so they could practice, for the most part, out of the elements and not have to go across town to other schools, other fields when it rained, because their old facilities were, when Bill Clark got there were countless high schools in the Birmingham area who had better facilities than UAB. Well, UAB upgraded all of that. Bill Clark went out in the community. Bill Clark rallied people who didn't much care about UAB one way or another and got them on the bandwagon. And they contributed in a big way, the Gang of Seven that helped bring UAB football back, and then allowed Bill Clark to do the things he needed to do to build a winning football program. And then it all went away. Because, well, there are several reasons why, but one of the exhibits on the front page is the hiring of Trent Dilfer. So he was in over his head from the start, and the problem was he thought he was the smartest person in the room. Now, I'll be honest, I never got to know Trent Dilfer while he was here. I reached out to him several times to set up interviews. He ignored me every time. So that's his choice. Was his prerogative. But the man, from all accounts, everyone I talked to, I know a lot of people who know a lot about UAB football and about UAB athletics in the city of Birmingham. I talk to those people. They share things with me. And They have for years, and I've always appreciated it because they have UAB's best interests at heart, as do I. So that's why I get angry when people say nobody cares about UAB football. That is one of the biggest lies that gets told in the state of Alabama about college football. UAB was drawing 25,000, 30,000 people a game at Legion Field when Bill Clark was there winning games and winning championships. And that may not compare to 90,000 at Auburn or 105 or 108 or however many people they can jam into Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Apples and oranges. UAB was at or near the top of Conference USA in attendance on a regular basis under Bill Clark because they won football games and they competed for and won championships. And Trent Dilfer thought that he was going to come in here and he was going to take UAB to the next level. As he said, he didn't inherit, in his introductory press conference, he said he didn't inherit a fixer-upper of a house. He just inherited a house that needed, some upgrades here or there. And he was going to be the man to do it. This man who had never coached a college football game as an assistant or as a head coach, who'd been a high school coach for only 4 years at a private high school in Nashville where you could buy a roster, you could recruit, and you had a lot of advantages that a lot of your competitors didn't have. UAB doesn't have those advantages, didn't have them then, doesn't have them now. So you had to work. You had to get out in the community. You had to make friends with the most prominent boosters. You had to get them on your side. And he never accomplished any of that because he never built up any capital. If we were in Texas, you would say he was all hat, no cattle. Here he was all mouth, no results. Got worse every year. And to be frank, I'm a little surprised that UAB had the wisdom and the fortitude to fire him now. And Alex Mortensen, the offensive coordinator, will take over as the interim coach for the rest of the year. Alex Mortensen, the son of the outstanding sports journalist Chris Mortensen, may he rest in peace. Alex is well-schooled. Alex spent a lot of years on Nick Saban's staff as one of those behind-the-scenes people that didn't get any credit, at least publicly, but helped make the operation go, helped make the organization work as well as it did. Nick Saban has a lot of faith in Alex Mortensen and recommended him to Trent Dilfer to take that job at UAB. So we'll see how it turns out. UAB is undermanned. They will be overmatched starting this. They have been for several years because Trent Dilfer didn't know how to recruit either. And yes, he was handicapped and hamstrung by NIL. UAB doesn't have the funds that its competitors in the American have. And part of the reason is Trent Dilfer never provided proof of concept. He never showed what was possible at UAB because he first of all hired a bunch of guys as assistants who had no college experience. Big mistake to start. Bring in somebody that knows more than you. He didn't. And he paid for it. And even this year, he brought in a bunch of guys with NFL experience to help turn around a defense that was one of the worst in the Football Bowl Subdivision. And I think they've gotten worse. So the real issue, the real culprit, the blame for UAB football's failure the last 2.5 years lies squarely on the shoulders of Trent Dilfer. He will not be missed. Now, so while some UAB fans are celebrating and thinking, well, ding dong, the witch is dead, now they can get back to putting together first a respectable program on the field, there's a problem with that. And it's a bigger issue for the Blazers. Let's look at what that issue is. Actually, that should be plural. It should be issues. It's the gentleman on the left, Ray Watts, the president of UAB, and the gentleman on the right, Mark Ingram, the athletic director. There you see them they're all smiles. That was at Trent Dilfer's introductory press conference. And the words of Mark Ingram at that press conference still resonate in my ears when he said, "I'm not hiring a high school coach. I'm hiring the number 6 pick in the NFL draft." Well, North Carolina just hired maybe the most successful NFL coach of all time. How's that working out for the Tar Heels, who play college football? So just to think, because Trent Dilfer was a very good college quarterback, a mid-NFL quarterback, who talked a great game, except when he said things like, during his work at ESPN, you can't win in the NFL by losing. And maybe the breaking point for UAB with Dilfer was a week ago at his Coffee with Coach Monday morning visit with the media, and he pulled out a sheet of paper. He pulled out a white sheet of paper, and he did this, and he put a little circle on it. He said, "What is that?" And it was a dot, of course. And he went on to give a soliloquy about the dot of negativity and how you can't make the dot bigger than it is. You can't see the dot as something larger than it actually is. And again, it just became a running joke. But the problem is, he was in that position to turn UAB into a laughingstock because of those two gentlemen right there, Ray Watts and Mark Ingram. First of all, Ray Watts is the man behind shutting down UAB football in the first place. Oops. There's a fumble. Back in 2014. Did it in a disingenuous way. And Ray Watts doesn't much care about UAB athletics. Now, I know he has a lot of other things to worry about. He is the president of the university. But he has never seemed to grasp the concept that athletics is the front porch of your university. And the more successful your athletics program, the more it can benefit the rest of your university. As UAB has grown as an undergraduate destination, as it has improved its facilities, not just for athletics, but in other ways for regular students, if you will, made a true on-campus atmosphere. A lot of that was driven by Bill Clark's success. The enrollment continued to rise during those years. But Ray Watts, he would rather not have to worry about athletics in general, and football in particular. Which is funny because he was a high school football player in the Birmingham area, back in the Stone Age. So the real problem, and Ray Watts isn't going anywhere. I hate to inform you, UAB fans, but he's not going anywhere. I don't think anytime soon. So you have to deal with him. But the bigger issue is the man on the right. That's Mark Ingram, the athletic director. Mark Ingram, well, how should I put this? He may be the most disliked, mistrusted administrator in college athletics I've ever encountered. And that's saying something. I mentioned earlier Bill Clark retiring because of his bad back, and he had to have fusion surgery, which was true. But the bigger pain in his backside was Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram is primarily responsible for pushing Bill Clark to make the decision to leave. And it wasn't intentional on Ingram's part, I don't think. It was his lack of understanding that your job as an athletic director is to give your coaches the best opportunity to be successful, to show up on a regular basis, not just when they're handing out trophies and taking photos, but behind the scenes. What do you need, coach? What can I do to help? How's this working out? What about this idea? Come to him with ideas. And yet Bill Clark felt, and I can say this with very good authority, that he was in a tug of war on a daily basis with his athletic director. because the athletic director was more concerned with pinching pennies, with being overly officious. Look it up if you don't understand what it means. And really wanted to be seen as someone who deserved more credit than he did for UAB football's success. And probably, not to play amateur psychologist, but probably harbored some jealousy because Bill Clark got the credit as he deserved for UAB football's success, not Mark Ingram. Now, Mark Ingram hasn't been a total disaster at UAB the way Trent Dilfer was. Mark Ingram has improved the facilities. He's done some positive things there. But he has never understood what UAB is about. He has never understood the relationship, what it should be between an athletic director and a head football coach. So his two biggest sins have been helping push Bill Clark towards the door and then opening the door to Trent Dilfer. And I'm telling you this right now. If the firings at UAB stop with Trent Dilfer, nothing is going to change. If you let Mark Ingram hire the next football coach, you have failed as a university. I can't tell you how many texts I got last night, phone calls from people within that athletic department, boosters of that program, of that university, who said that very same thing. Ingram's got to go next. Do I have confidence that that will happen? No. Because I think for some reason I cannot fathom, and others that I know can't either, Ray Watts likes Mark Ingram, or he's comfortable with Mark Ingram as his athletic director. So, unless something changes behind the scenes, it will likely be Mark Ingram hiring another coach. And that is a bad, bad idea. So good luck to UAB. Who's on the short list? You know, just to point out the incompetence of Mark Ingram when it comes to helping shepherd a football program as the AD. You know who he could have hired the last time when he hired Trent Dilfer? He could have hired Barry Odom. Barry Odom was interested in the job. But Mark Ingram told people after talking to Barry Odom, he at least had him on his list. They had known each other at Missouri when Ingram worked there and when Odom coached there. He told people behind the scenes that Odom was too boring. And I think that's what he thought about Bill Clark as well. Barry Odom, defensive-minded coach, as Bill Clark was. Bill Clark won games on defense and toughness and a hard-nosed running game. He didn't blow people out. He didn't throw 50 passes a game. He didn't light up the scoreboard. But he hung W's on the scoreboard. And that apparently wasn't good enough for Mark Ingram. And so he passed on Barry Odom, who went on to UNLV and had enough success there to get the job at Purdue. Good call there, Mark Ingram. Good call. So you're going to let that guy hire the next football coach? Again, if you do, you're not serious about football at UAB. And there are a lot of people in this community and across this state who do care about UAB football deeply, who care about that university, care about that athletic department, and it's not just football. And if Andy Kennedy hadn't fallen into Mark Ingram's lap, who knows where UAB basketball would be? So we're gonna move on from that before I say something that really gets me in deep water. I'm just going to tell you, UAB deserves better. It deserved better than Trent Dilfer, and it finally understood it. It deserves better than Mark Ingram, and when are they going to see that light? But there's another football program in this state that is in deep water, and another coach whose seat just got a little hotter after what happened Saturday in Jordan-Hare Stadium. All right, we're going to get into some details, but let's look at first the numbers, the bottom line, because the bottom line is the bottom line. And who still believes in Hugh Freeze? I asked that question on Twitter yesterday, and the answers were not promising for Hugh Freeze. Overall, he's 14-17 in the middle of his third year. In the SEC, he has the exact same conference record as Trent Dilfer had when he was fired yesterday. Hugh Freeze is 2-7 in SEC games in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So he is helping to bury the idea that Jordan-Hare is one of the best home field advantages in the country. That is gone, except for the Alabama game. It still exists when Alabama rolls in there. But otherwise, the mystique of Jordan-Hare, that crowd on Saturday night was off the hook. The light show, the noise, the ceremony to retire Cam Newton's jersey. Auburn had everything going for it. They couldn't bring it home. And we'll break it down in a moment in more detail. But against ranked teams, Hugh Freeze is 1-11. And in games decided by 10 points or less, the closer the game, I believe, the more impact a head coach has on the outcome. A personnel decision, a play call, a motivational moment on the sideline with an individual, whatever it might be. And in games decided by 10 points or less, he's 2-11. That's not good enough. It shouldn't be good enough. Not for Auburn, not for anyone in the SEC. So let's get into what happened. I know the anger among Auburn fans, and not just Auburn fans, at the officiating on Saturday night reached new levels. You had Alabama fans coming to Auburn's defense and just howling about a number of play calls in that game, but particularly the tush push. Now, Auburn hadn't pulled this out before. This was a new one. Auburn had a week to prepare, so they come out against Georgia. First of all, they did a great job game planning for that game. The Auburn offensive staff, led by Hugh Freeze, they went right down the field, scored a touchdown on their first possession. Second possession, they go right down the field, but they bog down in the red zone. They kick a field goal. They're up 10-0. Georgia's doing nothing on offense. It looked somewhat like the Tennessee game when Georgia went to Neyland Stadium, and the home team was just pouring it on. Now, in Auburn's case, 10 points is pouring it on because that offense hasn't exactly been very spectacular under Hugh Freeze's tenure. So we get to late in the second quarter, and Auburn is on the doorstep again. And they decide to go with the tush push. And it is a scrum, as those things always are. The ball comes out. No one knows. They don't signal touchdown. It appears, watching it live on television, that Jackson Arnold crossed the plane, which is all you have to do. The nose of the football crossed the plane, and it's a touchdown. You can't tell, though, and they show replays, and they don't have the angles aren't great. The view isn't perfect. Obviously, there are a lot of bodies in there. The ball gets punched out by a Georgia defender. Was the ball coming loose before he crossed the plane? The replay, they didn't call it. They didn't call it a touchdown on the field. They called it a fumble recovered by Georgia. Not sure why they didn't allow Georgia to run down the field with it as they did and count it as a touchdown. For the Bulldogs, this was, as many people have pointed out, the first time in SEC history that they took away a touchdown, that SEC officials took away a touchdown from both teams on the same play. But it appeared to me and to a lot of other people, after watching the replays, the best angles they had, that Jackson Arnold had crossed the plane with the football, or the football had crossed the plane while he still had possession before it was punched out, and therefore should have been a touchdown. And after the extra point, a 17-0 Auburn lead. But that's not what happened. After, 10 minutes of scrutiny, the review, the replay booth, checking with Birmingham, of course, where the replay center is located at the SEC office, and they decided they didn't have enough evidence to overturn, so it remained a fumble. Okay, at that point, all hell was breaking loose in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And then the next drive by Georgia, there's one penalty by Auburn after another. And I'm sorry that was a target. Sorry, Auburn fans, but that was a targeting along the way. That was roughing the passer. They're going to protect passers. It's just the way it is. There's a screenshot. Jackson Arnold, the ball, he does not have possession there. The ball's already coming out. You see the Georgia defender who is punching it out. But it really was too close to call. And the replay was truly not definitive. So whatever they called on the field was going to stand. It just was. Because you're supposed to have clear and incontrovertible evidence to overturn a call. And the replay angles, the nature of the play, didn't provide that. So it was going to stand. And everybody wearing orange or navy and orange went nuts, including Hugh Freeze. And then the next drive happens, and there are several penalties against Auburn, which, again, I believe actually were penalties. And Georgia kicks a field goal. Okay, so we get to halftime. John Cohen, the Auburn athletic director, is walking off the field. He's walking not at the officials, but near the officials. He's barking at the officials. I'm not sure that's the right thing for the CEO of your athletic department to be doing. I know John Cohen is a competitor. He's a former baseball coach in the SEC at Mississippi State. I'm sure he was incensed, and that's understandable. His anger was understandable. Hugh Freeze's anger was understandable. And if you watched Hugh Freeze, though, in his halftime interview with Molly McGrath from ABC, he just seemed defeated. He just seemed like we can't win no matter what we do. And, of course, you can all flash back to the Oklahoma game a few weeks ago, the hideout touchdown that should have been penalized and wasn't, and it stood. But as I've pointed out, Auburn still had 40-something minutes of football left after the hideout touchdown to get its act together and win the football game in Norman, and it didn't. And then it got completely shut down at Texas A&M and was a disaster in the fourth quarter. So you already have this backstory of Auburn. Look, Auburn people historically feel like they get the short end of the stick. From the SEC office, which is located in Birmingham, and Birmingham has long been a Birmingham town. I've lived here a long time. There are plenty of Auburn fans here, but there are more Alabama fans. And when the Iron Bowl was played at Legion Field, it was not a 50-50 ticket split. There were more Alabama fans in there than Auburn fans. And Alabama played a bunch of its home games there. Auburn at one time played a few home games there, but then they moved all of their home games to Jordan-Hare. So it was not quite even. So Auburn fans, with some good reason, have always felt put upon. They have always felt like the underdog, that they don't get the breaks. Although I might remind them, funny that Cam Newton was in the stadium on Saturday night, and he did all he could. He's out, he's grabbing megaphones, he's in the student section, he's leading the swag surfing. He is into it. I'm old enough to remember when people, Auburn rivals, opposing fan bases, said Cam Newton would never darken Auburn's door after that 2010 season. After he won the Heisman, he led the Tigers to a national championship. He doesn't care about Auburn. He's off to the NFL. You'll never see him again. Obviously, another lie told by Auburn's rivals about the Cam Newton experience. But Cam was doing all he could. And if you recall, in 2010, when people were making accusations, unfounded accusations, never proven by the NCAA during its 13-month colonoscopy of the Auburn football program and the recruitment of Cam Newton, they never proved that Auburn gave him a dime or gave a dime to his dad or his dad's church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But who stood up for Cam Newton during that time? Who went to bat for Cam Newton during that time? Mike Slive, the SEC commissioner, and the SEC office. So Auburn has not always been, there's Cam, who has a creative way of dressing, particularly in his hat selection. There he is with one of the cheerleaders' megaphones. And again, I have to say this. I have to say this every opportunity I get. Greatest individual season in college football history, 2010, period, end of discussion, don't at me. So it was cool to see. And you know what? Maybe the coolest thing on Saturday night was Cam Newton saying, I gave Auburn 365 days of enjoyment. Auburn has given me a lifetime of appreciation. You can't say it any better than that about what Auburn means to former players, to alums, to generation after generation of the Auburn family. Other people mock it, but it's a real thing, and it matters to them. And I understand your anger. I understand your frustration. I thought it was a touchdown also. But, and this is a big but, you have to turn the page. This is sports. This is life. Adversity is going to hit you in the face. And after the tush-push call, or non-call, however you want to look at it, after the replay was not overturned, after the touchdown was not awarded to the Tigers, there it is again. First of all, maybe don't fumble the ball. Maybe secure the ball so it doesn't come out at all. All right? That's something you can control. I know it's hard to control when the guys are punching at footballs more and more. That's the standard now for defensive players. Punch the football out. But maybe if you secure it, the ball doesn't come out. We're not having this conversation. But even after that, after Georgia's penalty-marred drive for a field goal at the end of the half, you're still winning the game 10-3. You still have put up over 200 yards of offense against Kirby Smart's defense. You have 20 minutes or so of halftime to regain your composure, to steady your team if you're Hugh Freeze, and then go out and do what you did in the first half. Keep moving the ball. Keep putting points on the board. Keep putting pressure on Georgia. That's not what happened. It completely flipped. It was as if the air went out of the stadium, and particularly it was as if the fight went out of Hugh Freeze. And you could see it in that halftime interview. And I know I'm playing amateur Sigmund Freud here, but go back and watch it. I actually thought at one point that he almost was fighting back tears, that he was on the verge of tears. That's how upset he was. But that attitude, that vibe, that carries over to your team. So should we really be surprised that Georgia outscored Auburn 17-0 in the second half? Should we really be surprised that Auburn had, I believe, 23 snaps in the second half for a grand total of 40 yards, most of them on the final drive, which ended up turning the ball over on downs? Should we really be surprised that Kirby Smart and company made adjustments? Hey, that bunch shut out Alabama in the second half in Athens, but Alabama had put together enough points in the first half to win the game. So Kirby Smart, who has now won 9 straight games against Georgia, with Georgia against Auburn, which matches the longest losing streak by Auburn in a rivalry series, the 9 games that Alabama beat them from 73 to 81. Kirby Smart made adjustments. Hugh Freeze did not counter. His team lost its fight. And who do we blame for that? And then in the postgame, this resonates with me, and I would encourage you to read my column today. You can find it on al.com. I encourage you to subscribe to the Birmingham News. A lot of good stuff there for subscribers that is not available to all people, all readers. But look at this quote from Hugh Freeze after the game. In his opening post-game remarks, he said a number of things leading up to this. We felt like we were going to win the game, and here I am feeling again that we don't quite know how to do that. Hugh Freeze has been a coach in the SEC for 7+ years. This is his 8th season as an SEC head coach. He had a losing record at Ole Miss, 19-21 overall in conference games. And he has a worse losing record in 2.5 years at Auburn at 5-14. He has not demonstrated that he can make a decision or influence a game in such a way that his team will find a way to win a close game. Have they improved the talent level? Absolutely. The gap between them and Georgia is a lot closer than it was in 2023, Freeze's first year at Auburn. And what happened when Georgia went to Auburn in 2023? The game was tied at 20 with about 6 minutes left when Georgia went on a game-winning drive led by Carson Beck and primarily Brock Bowers. So you were closer to beating Georgia in your house 2 years ago when Georgia had far more talent than you did. When Georgia was coming off 2 straight national championships and was making a run towards a three-peat, which Alabama derailed in the SEC championship game, you shouldn't have been on the field with Georgia in 2023. You shouldn't have been close in the fourth quarter with Georgia in 2023, but you were. You couldn't find a way at the end, and now you've got a better roster than you had then. Georgia's roster, I would argue, is one of the less talented rosters that Kirby Smart has put together in Athens. That's the way of the game now. It's the way of college football. You're not going to see dominant programs that do what Alabama did or come anywhere close to it. So you're going to see more upsets. You're just not seeing them with Auburn. You're just not seeing Hugh Freeze unlock a way to win a close game. And at what point do you say, this is who he is? This is the way it's going to be. If he hasn't figured it out by now, not just in 2.5 years at Auburn, but in 5 years before that at Ole Miss, what makes you think that he's going to find some answers now? So that raises the larger question, what does Auburn do? Hugh Freeze was already on the hot seat when the season began. We all know that. But what does it mean? And let me caution you, and this goes for the UAB coaching search, the situation at Auburn now. You will hear a lot of stuff from a lot of people. You will see candidates thrown out at UAB that will never appear or never occur to Mark Ingram or whoever's doing the hiring. You will see names tossed out. This happens every coaching search. And it's kind of laughable, especially if you're covering it and you do have good connections and good sources and you have a pretty good idea of what's happening and you see these names tossed out and you know that's not real. That's not real. He's not real. He's not coming. They're not looking at him. He's not interested in them. There's a lot of misinformation that gets tossed out during coaching searches and during hot seat experiences. So I can't tell you right now what Hugh Freeze's future is at Auburn. I can't tell you. Well, part of the reason is who's going to make the decisions at Auburn. That's always been a fascinating parlor game. Who's making the call? Who's directing the athletic director to interview this person, to push out this coach, to go after that coach? It's not always easy to figure out. There was a time when it was easy to figure out, when Auburn's inner circle was a dot. To circle back to Trent Dilfer's dot of negativity explanation last week. I was going to say something else, but sometimes you have to censor yourself live in the moment. All right, so I don't know where Auburn's going, but I will say this. I will be surprised if Hugh Freeze is the coach at Auburn in 2026. Maybe he'll figure it out. Maybe they'll turn it around. The schedule softens somewhat, although Missouri, which is coming in there Saturday, had Auburn beat 2 years ago, and on its last visit, maybe that wasn't 2 years ago, but on its last visit, actually, Brian Harsin was there. I think it was Brian Harsin's last win, actually, at Auburn. And Missouri did everything but win the game and handed Auburn every opportunity to win the game, and Auburn took advantage finally. This Missouri team's better than this Auburn team. It just is. There's that man. The dot of negativity. Well, there are no words. There are no words for a man who thinks he's the smartest man in the room. And after 2.5 years, he never grasped what it meant to be the coach at UAB, what it took to be the coach at UAB. And all your fast talking, all your big words, all your ESPN analyst explanations fell flat. Never should have had the job in the first place. We'll see if UAB can get it right. We'll see if Auburn can figure it out and get it right. I don't have a lot of confidence in either case. But that's why we watch the games. That's why we follow the news. That's why you follow me on Twitter at Kevin Scarbinsky. I hope you'll continue to do that. And hope you'll continue to tune in to Scarbo Knows. Like I said, if you watch on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. We appreciate it. I appreciate Brendan Martin, the executive producer of the Sidelines.live network. And I especially appreciate our sponsor, Money Management Services, the Rice family. Good friends of mine. They'll take great care of you. Until next time, have a great week. Check out Money Management Services. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.